Right, so we will be comparing two types of digestion today, mechanical digestion and chemical digestion, and then talk about, well, there's actually two parts to the digestive system, and then what those functions of the parts are. Right, so your digestive system is a group of organs that break down food so that it can be used by the body. Let's go ahead and write that under definition. A group of organs that break down food so that it can be used by the body. And then for number 2, where it says includes, you can list these organs here starting with mouth all the way to anus. So organs that your digestive tract includes: mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. Now those are just parts of the digestive tract. The digestive tract is the main part of the digestive system. It is the part, it's that tube that I showed you and pulled it out, and see how long it was? It's the actual place where food goes through your digestive system. So your food touches all those pieces, they go through that. So it's a tube in your body that's twisted up and stored in your body for food. The other part of your digestive system includes these organs listed below that you don't have to list, but it also includes the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and salivary glands would be part of the digestive system, but your food does not travel through any of these right here. And here you can see that picture that you have to fill in the blanks. And I'll just run through this and show you the path where food is going to go through. And then I'll show you the other parts. So I'm going to start by highlighting the digestive tract in red in just a moment. So the food travels into your mouth, and it goes down your throat, past your pharynx and your larynx, which is also part of the respiratory system. And then it goes down your esophagus into your stomach. Notice your stomach is a large place. Then it travels into the small intestine, and that small intestine gets wrapped and looped and stuff in your abdomen, and then it turns into the large intestine. It goes up, and it goes over, and it goes down, and it twists over. And then you have the rectum and the anus. So what I have highlighted in red is the digestive tract. Your food goes through that. That is one long tube that changes diameter and shape throughout. And then you have the accessory organs. You have in your head the salivary glands. They make saliva, and there's actually a digestive chemical in saliva. It's called amylase. And amylase breaks down sugars or carbohydrates. So it's important to have saliva in your mouth to help you chew your food, and then that food travels down your esophagus and your stomach, and then there's a place right here, right after the stomach, between the stomach and the small intestine, where we get some other things squeezed in there. The liver makes a chemical called bile. Bile breaks down fat, and that bile gets stored in the gallbladder, which is right underneath it, and that gallbladder will squirt bile into your small intestine right in the middle there. And then below your stomach you have a pancreas, and the pancreas makes something called pancreatic juice, which gets squirted in the small intestine too. And helps with digestion. So you guys have any questions? So I said that there was two types of digestion. There is mechanical digestion and there's chemical digestion. So in mechanical digestion, we're using physical motion to break down food. So that includes your mouth and your teeth chewing your food. It includes your stomach squishing around. So your stomach has muscles in the wall of it. It squeezes the stomach and it turns your food around, kind of like clothes in a laundry out just the wash machine, sort of. And it mixes that food with digestive juices in your stomach. And then food goes down and kind of gets pushed down through the intestines. So that would be mechanical digestion. And chemical digestion is when we have acids and enzymes squirted into the digestive tract to help to break down the food into really tiny molecules. Really tiny molecules. So large molecules get broken into small molecules. Do you guys have questions on the difference between mechanical and chemical digestion? Okay, so that mechanical digestion starts here in the mouth. So your teeth are actually part of your digestive system. And there's different types of teeth that help with like tearing food and then grinding food. And it helps to mix the food around in the mouth, and your tongue helps you mix your food around in your mouth. And what happens in your mouth is your mouth turns your food into a kind of a wet, mushy ball called a bolus. So in your mouth, you turn your food into a bolus, and then you swallow it. I think I might have a picture coming up to show you how we swallow the food. Soon there will be. So, like I said, the saliva has a chemical in it that helps to break down carbohydrates. Do you remember what I said that chemical was called? Amylase. There, I showed it better. So it's to break down carbohydrates and sugars. And then your food leaves your mouth in a soft mush. What is that mush called? A bolus. And it travels down into the esophagus. So from your mouth to your esophagus, your food is a bolus. Darn it, where's my picture? Okay, and then in the stomach, actually, let me just show you a picture here. I'm going to go back. All right, so in your stomach, you have, you can write down what's underlined here. Break down food into nutrients. You can write that for stomach is what it does. But it is a muscular sac-like organ attached to the lower end of the esophagus. And there are tiny glands in the stomach that produce enzymes and acids to break down nutrients. So we call those gastric juices. Gastric means stomach. After a few hours of your stomach constantly churning the food like the washing machine and mixing it with these digestive juices, then it turns into something called chyme, which you can see up here, chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. So in your mouth, your chewing and stuff turn the food into what? Bolus. And now, after it's been in the stomach, it turns it into chyme. So now chyme is going to be acidic and really fluidy kind of, well, you probably, if you've ever gotten sick and thrown up, you've probably seen chyme. So after your food's been in your stomach for a while, it turns into chyme. Question? The pancreas is located between the stomach and the small intestine, and it makes pancreatic juice. And that goes into the small intestine, and it's an acid, and it helps to digest your food even more. In fact, most of the digestion in your, most of the microscopic digestion in your digestive tract happens in the small intestine. But another thing that happens in the small intestine, and you can copy this underlined portion by small intestine, most of what happens there is absorbing nutrients into the bloodstream. You have some of that happening in your stomach, but most of it happens in your small intestine. So it takes those nutrients that got broken down into tiny little molecules, and it passes them into the bloodstream at the small intestine. And I'll show you these villi on the next slide. The inner lining of the small intestine is rough and bumpy, and it's lined with villi. and villi are places where this absorption occurs. Okay, so we can see here, up at the top we have the esophagus and then the stomach. And then we have, so remember I just told you there's a sphincter up here? Well, right here. There's a sphincter between the stomach and the esophagus. There's another sphincter down here between the stomach and the small intestine, so that that chyme doesn't go through there until it's done digesting in here. Okay, and so then that chyme travels into the small intestine. Right here, where my pointer is, there's actually two things that go into the small intestine here. So I'm going to kind of look at this picture over here. See that pancreas right back there, that there's a yellow organ? There's a tube called a duct that goes from the pancreas right into there. And so that's where that pancreatic juice comes in. And then what am I pointing to here? The gallbladder. And it makes what? Or stores what? Did I tell you that already?
You did.
Bile. It must be on the next slide. So that bile actually comes through the same place that pancreatic juice comes in, and it goes into the small intestine there. And so the small intestine is going to break down more fats, but here's where the absorption of those nutrients happens. Do you notice down here, there's not much of it, the inside of that small intestine is not smooth? Okay, it's rough. And if we zoom in, this is what it looks like. Okay, it folds up, and each one of these folds is called a villus. Plural is villi. And notice, what are these red and blue things here?
Blood vessels.
Blood vessels. If they're really, really small, we call them capillaries, remember? So here's capillaries, and now where my pointer is there, that's the surface, the inside surface of the small intestines we cover with epithelial cells. And so it can absorb nutrients, and those nutrients pass right through the wall of the small intestine and go right in to the blood vessels or the capillaries. And those capillaries then take those nutrients and deliver it to the rest of the body. So the reason it's folded, you would probably think, couldn't it do that not being folded? The reason it's folded is to increase the surface area. If I fold it a bunch of times, I can have this same process happening a lot. As to where if it was smooth, it could only happen in a smaller surface. So it increases the surface area so we can absorb more food faster. It's called increasing the efficiency, which is pretty cool. So any questions on that? All right, then we go talk about the liver and the gallbladder. So the liver, that large organ, it's brownish usually. In the cat, that didn't look so brown. But it's brownish reddish because there's a lot of blood in there. It makes bile. Whoops. It makes bile. And bile is a substance that breaks down fat. It kind of works like soap. When you put dish soap into like greasy dishes, it breaks down the grease when you're washing dishes. The bile breaks down the fat when you're digesting food. So your liver makes the bile, and your gallbladder stores the bile. And then the bile itself is green. If you've ever gotten so sick and you've thrown up a lot, and you have nothing left to throw up, and you start getting the yellow and green stuff, the green stuff is the bile, which is not good to be throwing that up, but anyways.
Could be throwing anything up.
Well, no, it's not. It's terrible. Okay. So the gallbladder, here's another picture of it. And that's showing it underneath the liver, so it's lifted the liver up a little bit so you can see it. And this is actually a really good picture of those ducts I was talking about. So you have a duct that goes from the bladder to your small intestine, and there's a duct that goes from the pancreas in there. So they both like squeeze out their juices right in there in that spot. Okay, so questions about that? All right, after food goes through the small intestine, it goes into the large intestine. And you can see here in the large intestine is where it absorbs most of the water in undigested material and changes the liquid into a semi-solid waste material called feces or stool. In the other class, Owen called it poo. Whatever you call it. That gets made in the large intestine. Write down this underline part for large intestine. Tannen. you write down this underlined part for the large intestine, and down here you can write this underlined part for rectum. The feces get stored in the rectum. So you have a lot of water in in that bolus in the chyme, there's lots of water. And your body wants water, so it takes up extra water. It acts like your large intestine acts like a sponge to slurp up the extra water from your chyme and turns it into feces. And so that you're just to keep you more hydrated, so you don't waste water. And then that feces gets stored in your rectum until you have to defecate, or what would you call that?
Go use the restroom.
Use the restroom. Okay, so I show you, if you look carefully at the formation of the large intestine, you can see it's got, it kind of does this. Sometimes your feces takes that similar shape. If it's been sitting in there and it's been dried, it's gotten a bunch of the water taken out, it might have that same form because that's where it's been sitting. And you also might notice maybe it has a similar shape to that sometimes. I've used to watch Oprah and Dr. Oz, and you would always say, your poop should look like an S like that. It means you're healthy and whatever. But anyways. So your feces get stored in the rectum, and then there's an urgency or whatever when you have to expel it and defecate. And it says here it takes about 24 hours to go from your mouth out of your anus. So that digestive system about 24 hours. However, sometimes, depending on what you eat, it goes through a lot faster. And if it goes through a lot faster, it doesn't sit in the large intestine for very long. So what kind of consistency would that stool or feces have if it went through your digestive system too fast? Diarrhea, watery. Yeah. Okay? Because it didn't sit in the large intestine for it to have that water taken out. So, questions on the digestive system. That was my last slide.